welcome back. Now we'll have a special session for Jerald, who is the director of Pusat Komas in Malaysia. He will be speaking on the topic Human Rights for All. Jerald, tell us about what work do you do with Pusat Komas?
Hi, welcome Vivian. Normally she should be welcoming me, but we had to welcome her because serious traffic issues, but it's nice to see you. Komas is one of the not so many human rights NGOs in Malaysia. Been around for 20 years. And the reason NGOs come up in Malaysia in the last 20 years is because we want to reclaim that human rights space that has disappeared in the last 20, 30 years. And I think the type of governments we had from the Mahathir era has taken out a lot of our rights. So NGOs have come up to reclaim that, not for ourselves, but for all Malaysians. So when I say human rights for all, I think being a citizen of Malaysia, I think there's also a discussion about, even if you're non-citizen, you should not violate a migrant worker. That's not my point. No? But being a citizen of the country, then you are entitled to rights so-called protected in the constitution. No? So example, Komas works on fighting racial discrimination, and that's a big issue in Malaysia. Everybody talks in terms of Malay, Chinese, Indian. Of course, forgetting all the indigenous people in Sabah, Sarawak, and Orang Aslis here. The usual forgetting.
If I could just provide a little context for our listeners, during Mahathir time, it is not uncommon to have a mass arrest of NGO leaders, and it also became kind of he strengthened the policy of race-based policies.
Correct.
Bumi Putra, what we call like Prince of the Land,
exactly. You're absolutely right. Actually, the Operasi Lalang, the infamous Operasi Lalang, I was in Form 6 in school, and that was like that morning.
That's why you didn't get arrested.
That morning, we all went to school, and we were shocked at the assembly because some teachers came and told, and everybody was very sad. We already understood what was oppression about. So we thought, wow, how can this happen? And Kamunting detention camp is in Taiping, so in our mind it was very heightened awareness of this. You're right, that policy of entrenching race-based politics is, I think, the disservice Mahathir has done to the country. The
Although he has did a lot of service in the economic sector, I believe, people claim.
It's true, but the economic sector is also suffering now because that same economic sector is trying to undo the 90% civil service that is Malay and the largely non-Malay private sector. That is what Mahathir is doing. So now you're trying to undo a policy. So while we were vibrant economically, we would have been vibrant economically even if we had a mixed ethnic grouping. But he was responsible for, I remember some statements saying that if the private sector don't want to employ Malays, I will make sure that they're all employed in the civil service. And that's why we have this 90% now. I also agree that the private sector also needs to break out of its racial molds, because they're excellent Malay individuals, competent, confident, but because of the racial stereotype, maybe this was more in 10, 15 years ago, has kept these two parts away. So that's the economic part that I think needs to be unpacked.
But I think that there's also an interesting phenomenon while I was growing up in school, is that kids would say, I want to be like Mahathir, like they looked up to him. Why is that so?
When Mahathir announced his resignation, I was speaking to some youth. I was doing this youth development program. They were like 19, 20. So I said, what do you feel? They said, we don't know how to feel because we've only had the same one prime minister for all this period. So when somebody who has been there that long and people wave flags and say, I love him or her, it's understandable because it's like your parents, you from birth to the time you're grown up, you only wave flags and say, you say that my mother's cooking is the best cooking. Nothing wrong in saying that, but because you've not tasted any other cooking all this 18 years of your life,
A little like tired as well?
Yes. That's another one. Time has surpassed Mahathir really. He's 30 over years, so I think he's another story altogether, but maybe we'll listen to that. But just back to Komas, our work on racial discrimination, I think you're right, is not to, we need to reclaim back the equality principle, we need to explain back affirmative action from a human rights point of view. The Article 153 that many people will say it's a hak Melayu, but it's not a hak. If you read the constitutional language, it's a privilege. It's called a special position. It's not rights. Okay.
Why was the privilege in the constitution?
Well, I suppose you have to go back to the history of constitution making, the Reid Commission, to balance out the imbalances and also to make the deals with the monarchy and the Malay elite. All that was part of it. But the important part was the Reid Commission suggested a 15-year review of the constitution that never happened after 57, which was going to review all this affirmative action policy. But even if you read Article 153, I think Part D or E, first it says the Agong, which means the government, has to give special privileges to support the Malays and the natives of Sabah and Sarawak. But then in, I think, D, they says that also the legitimate interests of all communities in Malaysia. So that's the part that is forgotten as a requirement and duty of Article 153. So it's a balancing equality principle in Article 153. I think any community in Malaysia that is left behind needs to be supported. That's the principle that is taken all along, okay? But what happened, Article 153 was strengthened after 69 with the new economic policy of 71. So that new economic policy, which is called the Bumiputra policy, was supposed to be around for 20 years. I think people agreed generally that it's okay to have something like this for 20 years to balance out inequality. But the danger we are in now, the affirmative action of Bumiputra policy that is extended now to 40 years already, it cannot be considered affirmative action. It's now considered a racist policy. In human rights...
Can I interfere to say that, would you even view Malaysia as an apartheid state?
Oh, that's a strong language to use, but some of the language when you hear ministers, at least right-wing groups like Perkasa and ISMA and all that are using, you are reminded of apartheid kind of language that never was around before. And then, sadly, the ministers do not stop these groups from stating this. They do not distance themselves. I mean, Mahathir is a patron of Perkasa. He goes for the big meetings of Perkasa. So then you're wondering, how come they are not stopping this kind of ultra extremist language, So it is, in one sense...
Are we moving towards that if we don't do something, something big to change the direction that we are moving?
And I think that's why the crisis that Najib silenced for so long, suddenly he spoke the last 2 months. He's has got a golden voice. We don't hear it much often, but we do on important critical matters. So on the issues of national unity, he formed the NUCC, which is trying to find a solution, But, NUCC, all of us are very tired with all this councils. They formed the Royal Commission on Police Reform. Nothing happened. And so now NUCC, and then I think 2 days ago he launched the National Reconciliation Something Plan. So he is recognizing there is a crisis, but I'm saying the crisis was allowed to happen because they never put a stop or distance themselves from groups like ISMA and all these Muslim-based groups that was attacking human rights as anti-Islam. I think a good government would have said, excuse me, Islam is also about human rights, which is spoken by many people. I've heard people say that, but it doesn't get covered by Utusan Malaysia, So that's sad. And Komas tries to now build work on awareness raising on racism, trying to also push the government for policy reform. So we went for the NUCC Open Dialogue. We do every year a national conference on non-discrimination. And there's also a working group trying to get the government to ratify the International Covenant on Elimination of Racial Discrimination that all countries in the world have signed except 16 countries. Malaysia is one of them, together with North Korea.
Proud 16.
Yeah, together with North Korea and Myanmar before.
So, Jerald, if you could share with us a little, what do you think the ASEAN community could do for Malaysia, or even what can they learn from Malaysia?
Okay. Actually, there's a lot we could learn, But before I go there, can I just share a little bit more?
No problem.
Komas, just want to finish this point. The second point, so one is racial discrimination program. The other one is the last 11 years we've been doing a human rights film festival.
Oh.
And this is the reclaiming the human rights for all space.
Okay.
So this year, Komas Film Festival is going to be launched on March 26, and the title is Freedom, and what we are talking about here. So if anybody in Malaysia has human rights films and want to submit it, please do.
Yep.
Because in October or November we will be having screening all over the cities, and this is how we want to open up the space to discuss about human rights.
Okay.
I don't think everybody agrees about everything in human rights, but at least we Malaysians should find space to discuss using video, and this we've been doing for 11 years. Not easy in Malaysia, you cannot catch out all the time, but please disturbed, or sometimes you are harassed, but go to Komas website, komas.org, and you will find out more information. But this same concept of human rights for all in ASEAN is also what ASEAN NGO communities are trying to do, because Malaysia is not the only country suffering human rights violation and abuse. Our neighbors, as you can know, Indonesia has issues of land, has issues of violence in some parts. Vietnam, very repressive. Singapore. So, in one sense, I feel that is an ASEAN community. We are struggling to reform a feudal society that is very repressive to something what the charter speaks about. This one, I think, in the morning we read some very powerful sounding principles of belief in human rights, fundamental freedom, all those things that are aspirational. So I think all ASEAN countries, number one, should not be defensive, because no country is perfect. So if Malaysia speaks about human rights violation, it's okay. But Malaysian government doesn't like us to speak about human rights violation outside Malaysia, because they say it's embarrassing. But for me, what is that to be embarrassing? No country is perfect. If there is violations here, my colleagues, NGO colleagues in the other country will share another list of violations on the other side. Sadly, we are united by violations, human rights violation. So that sort of unites the people to want to break out to another kind of ASEAN, no? And that's what we hope this charter and Aisha would be able to do. But just now, before break, we were talking, Aisha has a big idea, but it's not really functioning on the ground. So, and I think many of us don't even know who's our commissioner representing us in Aisha. And Tan Sri Shafi is supposed to be representing the interests of all Malaysians and all ASEAN people on human rights, but this morning we spoke about, we have question marks because, why would he want to represent a controversial case? He should be representing the case of Murum Dam violating Orang Asli rights, or the Orang Asal rights, or, ethnic issues, discrimination. Then we'll say, okay, we have a lawyer taking up human rights issues, but I hardly hear him linked to defense of human rights issues in Malaysia. So that's a worry. And it's not only him. Many other commissioners in Aisha are also not really icons of human rights, with the exception I mentioned of Thailand and Indonesia. Maybe some part of Philippines, the representative, they have been quite vocal in defending human rights. So we hope one day these 10 people will be our hope. If there's problem in Malaysia, we can actually also run out and seek for some sort of support and solidarity from another body. Now there's none. There's problem in Malaysia, we make police report, we make complaint, we go to Suhakam, we come to Durian ASEAN, make a talk here, or we go sometimes protest. So a whole variety of things in the country. But where else do we go? We write complaint letters to the UN. The Human Rights Council takes up issues seriously, but we should be able to write to a body in our neighborhood, right, ASEAN. But sadly, it's not really functioning yet.
I think one of the things that government could do is that to remember that the NGOs are not here to disrupt you per se. They do this and they risk their life because they love the country and they want to be your partners. And these are constructive criticism that came out of love. So what we could really do is to work together. Yeah.
Exactly. I think
not view us as enemy.
Enemies, correct.
Yeah.
And that's, you must have heard about the Coalition of Malaysian NGOs, Komango.
Yeah.
We submitted a human rights
The
report.
UPR review.
UPR to the UN. And that is nothing strange because the whole world, every country is reviewed. NGOs submit reports. You just Google, you can find any information. But the opposition to Komango came from the Muslim NGOs for UPR, a group of NGOs that organize themselves. And they accuse us of being anti-nationalists, anti-constitutional, anti-Islam, and anti-so many things. But your point is very important because we feel we are nationalists. We do this because we love the country and we believe the country is for all.
Yeah.
But they are accusing us by being critical, by demanding human rights for all. We are against the country, against the constitution, against Islam, which is totally not true and not a fair argument. But strangely enough, the government has again kept silent
But
on
I think their issue is also they are not represented in Komango, yeah?
You see,
Okay.
Komango is a coalition of human rights practitioners. I mean, we have a principle that you have to abide. But any coalition can participate in the UPR. We don't control the gateway. It's an open process. Anyone can register and go and participate. So Komango is not the official body recognized by the UN. It's just another coalition setup. Yeah. So the Muslim UPR people, they can also set up themselves. But the question is, UPR is supposed to be set against international standards of human rights and norms. So people who go should actually try to improve the country of human rights, which the Malaysian government in Geneva tries to explain its human rights record on what good it has done. Every government does that. So if MUPRO has a case with Komango, it actually should have a case with the Malaysian government for trying to explain itself on UN human rights, because the Malaysian government respects that in international human rights system, all government now have to answer. But MUPRO is saying that because you are using UN human rights means you are anti-Islam. So their criticism should not be on Komango, but should be on the government.
As well.
Yeah. But they have left the government out and they've been quite racist to say that, any person who speaks human rights is anti-Islamic or not taking care of the Malay rights. So that for me is racist. So a lot of the right-wing groups, and I use the word right-wing because these are newly coined groups in the last 5 years, who try to oppose anything to improve Malaysia's human rights on equality and non-discrimination. Yeah.
Should I also add that in Malaysia, religious and race is very intertwined because in our constitution you have to be a Muslim to be a Malay.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
Yeah. So of course, race and religion are intertwined, but that does not give anybody the right to take away rights of others. I think Islam and all other religions does not give you a license to discriminate, to oppress, or to take away other people's rights. Yeah.
Okay, with that, thank you very much, Jerald. We'll move on to our next session, moving to environment and communities issues in Borneo. Voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN. Hello, welcome back. Now we're moving on to a session of how is the environment issues and how does it impact the indigenous communities in Borneo. We have a guest with us today, Raynore who is currently an editor at Malay Mill, and he's also an indigenous from Sarawak, from the Kayan tribe, huh?
Yeah, that's correct. Good morning. Good morning, Vienna. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here, but I've been enjoying myself listening to Jerald the whole morning. If looking at Sarawak and the rights of the indigenous people, I would feel that deforestation is a major issue. But I think you have to look at it from this perspective of a minister once said, if you want to eat the egg, you have to crack the shell. So
some people just swallow it without cracking the shell.
So that's where the question of how much of our natural resources we should reap, explore, and where do we draw the line comes in. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in that, but maybe Jerald, for instance, would know from his experience in Sarawak. Yeah. I mean, Jerald said they cannot go to Sarawak. How many years?
since 98 on the blacklist. So I've not been longing to go and see your beautiful state.
So I should provide a little context. Just now we briefly spoke about how we have a very long-running chief minister in Sarawak, Taib. Tan Sri Taib. So this is also, this provides some of the context of how human rights NGO leaders are often blacklisted from being able to enter the state, which has an autonomous, it is an autonomous region which controls its borders, yeah? So that's why you can get blacklisted from being entered into Sarawak.
But I think the blacklist is only for Semenanjung people.
Yeah.
So
we won't get better.
Yeah, my colleagues from Sarawak here won't get that. But you may get other things I don't know. But at least not the blacklist.
I don't want to be the first.
But I remember in the 90s, they also tried to stop Sarawak activists, I mean indigenous people who used to defend against logging.
Right.
When they tried to leave out of KL, the old airport, couldn't stop. They were stopped. So there's another list of trying to stop Sarawak voices from going internationally to expose the massive logging. But that now is not happening anymore. It's changed. So at the international borders, you can go out and in. But in the internal borders between Semenanjung and Sarawak, sadly, I think there's a long list of human rights linked people from Semenanjung who are stopped from going in. Although it's a right of the state government, they have that autonomous right. And I don't think they're challenging that autonomous right, but I think the application to use that judiciously and on fair principle is important, because why do you stop us when we are working with local Sarawakans? We are not going there to do our own thing. That's different if you're going to Kacau Sarawak or disturb Sarawak, which are not. We are working with local NGOs, local communities. And that's why in 98 when I worked in the Bakun with the NGO, with your Kayan and Kenya people in the Baram upper, we used to go there very frequently to discuss with them, because they were very sad and angry that Bakun was going to displace 10,000 people, 15 longhouses. Sadly, they have been displaced. Sadly, they've become poorer. I don't know whether we are happy that there is a Bakun dam, but sadly the electricity I heard is not fully used. Maybe you know a bit more.
So Raynore, maybe we can provide a little context. How serious is the environment issue here?
I think a lot of things that Jerald said, the fears of the people remain to this day. I think largely it's because there are certain things that the government has promised to the people of Bakun until this day has not been fulfilled.
You're referring to the federal government or the state government?
The state government or the federal government.
What have they promised?
I just all my head things like certain size of land, maybe infrastructure even. So in their resettlement in Sungai Asap, these things are still not available. So when other communities hear of the government's plan to build more dams, naturally the fears come back. I want to say something about Taib. I'm not trying to defend him.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm just one of those person who has been waving the flag, and I've known he's the only chief minister I've known.
He's not the chief minister anymore.
Yeah, he's not chief minister anymore. He's now the governor. But
even worse. Oh gosh. Okay.
But I think with no other examples to go by when he came to the administration, how to govern a state with so many ethnic groups and scattered so far about and all that, I think he did what he thought was right by himself. I think as a Sarawakian growing up under his administration, I feel that we have been quite a lucky lot, especially in the urban centers. In the rural areas, maybe not so much. But in the urban centers, I feel that, most Sarawakians are happy, complacent maybe, and I think a bit afraid of change. But in the rural areas, the feelings are quite different. The jungles are going missing. Trees are going missing. I don't know where they have been going. Falling into the rivers.
I think water are getting polluted. And you're speaking about people who do not have pipes. Neither do they even have a cell phone network sometimes. So and they are drinking from the river, which is getting polluted now.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Palm oil plantation.
The question will arise: what do you do with this with our native people? Do you just leave them in their current setting, or do you resettle them in a more modern setting where they get all the facilities, the healthcare, education and all that? I think there's a group of people who want to see some of our people, especially the Penans, back in their all natural settings with their loincloths, hunting, things like that. But I personally don't think that's very fair.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, I was just telling Vienna, I think yesterday, a couple of years ago, there was a cholera, measles outbreak. And in the modern day, we shouldn't have things like that, and a community of Penans had to travel miles to get to go to a clinic. So, I don't know, I'm also quite torn with this thing. Like, I don't know what Jerald's point of view on human rights in this perspective. Do you allow people to go on the way they are, or should they get the same rights to education, rights to making a better living and things like that?
Actually, just I'm reminded of one workshop I did with the women of the Orang Ulu. It was in 98, because Bakun was happening, and they always say that why you want to force people to live where they are. So we had asked them what is it that they are opposing. So I asked them why you don't want the dam. If I remember right, they said, because it will take away our fish, it will take away our, all the things that they live, their livelihood, their lives. And the women understood the implication. And I asked the question you're asking, don't you want pembangunan or development? Yes. They said, of course we want pembangunan.
But it's conflict. It's conflict.
Yeah, you can't have both things.
So this is the question. Why is it a conflict? Because development, and I'm going to give you this example. In Switzerland, you're in Geneva, and then maybe 2.5 hours out of Geneva, there's a small village on a mountain. So when I first went to Switzerland many years ago, I wanted to see snow, no snow here. So I asked somebody where to go. They said, okay, this is the nearest place, got a bit of snow. So I took the train, went to a big city. Then you take another smaller train up the mountain, and the train goes every half an hour. A small train, 2 buggy train, going to this mountain. But along the mountain, I saw like maybe only about 10 houses. So, and these 10 houses were connected by train, had electricity, had water. My question is, this is the model of development that should work for people, which means that if people want to live in their natural environment, they should not be deprived of these basic rights. That's number one. Number two, people should have a choice. I agree with you that whichever community, Penan, they should be asked what kind of model of development they want. I'm sure the Penan youth want to use mobile phone, whatever, fine. Give them the option, but don't make them choose a choice between living their indigenous lifestyle or the so-called city lifestyle. They let them decide, no? They want to have best of both worlds, and many countries give them that option. I think the false idea is that you need development in terms of oil palm plantation. You need development in terms of 16 dams, when even one dam is not, electricity is not fully utilized. So the justification of why 16 dam, is it going to put 1 million bulbs in Taib's house? I don't know, So the question is, I think that is a little bit of a false notion of you leave indigenous people in their kampong, and always this is the classic Taib Mahmud answer. Penans want these people who are fighting for human rights want the Penans to be in their loincloth. I don't think that's right. We want Penans to have their land, because it's all about land, right?
Yes. They are fighting for their land.
The Penans want to have school, because they've told me they want schools. If they can get some road access, they may come closer. The indigenous Orang Ulu, your Kayan Kenya people in Baram, want access. They don't want non-access. They want access. They want phone. They want satellite dishes. All these are development things that now is possible. It's not impossible. It's possible, even in interiors. But the question of money. Right, that's the bottom line. And my question is, by building the dam, doesn't mean now the money goes to the poor people. Like you say, Sungai Asap, the community has become poorer. So where is the so-called promise of development of Bakun? That was the dream of the people. They lost their land, they lost their trees, they lost their possibility of fishing, because before 15 villages lived, over hundreds of miles along the river. But now they're all resettled in one smaller area. There's no more fish. They have to share a very small fish, not enough fish. They have to share their tamuda. So what they had better before, now they've lost in the so-called promise of development. So I think this notion of blaming human rights people, both Sarawakians and Semenanjung people, to give them the choice, which is an UN accepted norm called the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. That norm is what Orang Asal should decide. I agree with you, we should not keep them where they are. But people should have the right to decide what kind of model of development we want. And I don't think schools buildings and roads must be in big cities. I think schools must be where people are. Small roads, access, phones should be where people are, because if not, we're going to crowd Kuching and Cebu to be like a messy Kuala Lumpur and Petaling Jaya. Everybody is coming here. We don't want that. We want different modes of development.
I agree with Jerald with the bottom line being money, and also the dams. I think in the back of all our minds as Sarawakians, we are all asking ourselves, how are these dams going to benefit us at the end of the day? Will it just benefit a few? Will it just benefit the industries in particular? So I believe that too is how the rural people are feeling. I gave up my land. What will I get in return? It's not so easy as just being resettled. Because what I give up, their ancestral land, the thing that have been in their family for so long, everything is gone underwater. So, yeah, I agree, Jerald.
And I would add that a lot of social issues come in place because of that. Because now that they have lost kind of their identity, they lost how they used to live, and some of them have to resort to possibly drugs issues and whatnot.
I would be surprised if the level of I would say alcoholism, for instance, among the native youths are quite high. Especially now, when they leave their kampongs and they come to the cities and they have hard time assimilating to city life. So it's quite it's a worrying thing.
Perhaps I would personally agree that it's not mutually exclusive. Development and also the way of life of the ancestry. So rather maybe like a model like possibly what Switzerland do with education. Having very basic schools in small areas. Having a school that accommodates let's say 6,000 and that's it. That could be a model.
I think it's being done. I think it's been done in Sarawak. Yeah, schools with less than 10 people. The education department is trying, but while we want to believe that everyone wants to go to school, not all parents actually feel that way. Some of them want their kids to stay home and take care of the family with them, take care of their farm and things like that.
But I think that's a problem because we have not enough knowledge about how important is education, especially to those native people. I was a temporary teachers that in some of the rural area in Kabong, I think. Kabong, So that's a Chinese primary school. So each year they only have one class, and each class is only have about 20 students. But what's funny is that most of the students, they are from the Indigenous. I face a hard time in teaching them using the Chinese language. The problem is they totally cannot communicate in Mandarin and not even the Malay. So this is a problem, whenever we give them the education, so whatever they request for, that's the thing that really suit to their needs, or maybe is that they can understand what we are giving them?
If I could personally share some experience I have, one of the NGOs that I think did a really great job in this is PACOS in Sabah, where they besides helping Indigenous with land issues, they also educate them on UN DRIP, the Universal Declaration for Indigenous People, and they also build community learning centers in places where, like I mentioned, no cell phone networks, no electricity whatsoever, and even micro hydro generators. So in the community learning centers, what they do is they reduce the gap for the Indigenous kids before they go on to primary school. So it's a kindergarten, but they teach them their Indigenous language and they teach them like English and whatnot as well. So I think, I think this is the model, like for me, for how I see things should happen, having basic facilities and the awareness of the world outside, and letting the Indigenous kids choose what they want to do. And what I observe is that a lot of Indigenous kids eventually return to become teachers in those community learning centers. So there's a continuity.
This begs the question of the quality of education, because the cities or towns, I think both Semenanjung and Sarawak, the schools you have good schools, people all rush to go to them. My question is, why are all the good schools only in the cities? Because a school is made up of a successful school is made up of facilities, good teachers, and good methodology.
Yes.
So if they can do it in the cities, in Kuching, Cebu, Kuala Lumpur, Ipoh, why can't they replicate the same models in the Belaga? In the interior kampung.
A lot of teachers don't want to serve.
So this is
and I've heard that out of like 5 days of schooling, you only have teachers for like 2 or 3 days, and that's like normal.
Yeah.
No one want to go there because I think it's the transportation, the accessibility is one of the problems. Some of the teachers, they need to travel by using three kind of transport, some by sampan, throughout the bus and so on. Some even need to travel.
Sampan is like boat, yeah?
Yeah, boat.
Yeah.
So that's create some problem to the teachers to go to their teaching.
So what we really need is probably to educate, like I mentioned the model, educate those
teachers.
No,
teachers need to be educated.
No. Like you grow teachers from the indigenous community itself. Yeah, that's what
I think what your example, Vivian, of PAKOS doing in Sabah, and even there's some smaller Orang Asli NGOs in Semenanjung doing, is the duty of the government to provide that model of what you explain, to train local teachers, to include their local language so they get empowered, they have the choices, and then they can take on this, is rather than have a model of school, syllabus, and then get teachers who are reluctant to come. And I think even if we are sent to interior to stay for a few years, we all will go mad, no Facebook, no. So I think that's a bigger issue. But I think if you take on the profession as a teacher, there's a certain commitment and expectation from the nation for you to educate children, irrespective of which children they are, kampung, town, city, same motivation, same content. But if the teachers are demotivated in the interior school, then we will always have this problem of kids dropping out 2 days or after they go back to the kampung. How can those teachers have extra skills, the model of the PAKOS model or the MOCA, to enable the students who have their own cycle of farming.
That's right.
So if exactly. So if you have rice harvesting days, so you can kurang the school a bit. Other days you increase. That will mean that you are now a very localized education system.
I think our education minister already has his hands full at the moment.
His hands full doing what?
Raynore, maybe.
I would elaborate. I think the one thing about Sarawak is I think we always have this feeling that we know how to run our state better. We don't need people to come in and tell us what to do.
I think that's also the main problem of the Sarawak.
I think it is.
I did ask questions. During I was hosting in Durham FM, the Chinese program, right? Most of people the question is like that. Okay, if I give you an option to choose, you want the UMNO to come in to rule the Sarawak, or you let type to rule it? Then the answer is the Sarawakian willing to just let type to rule rather than just UMNO to come in. They don't want, they just block the UMNO to come in Sarawak. You see, how are you going to choose? If for me, I would just, I rather to change the CM rather than just give UMNO or the type to choose. But how are you going to choose on that question?
I think in politics in Sarawak, we are not as aggressive as West Malaysians. I think a lot of us want the current status quo. In Sarawak, we don't play so much
the racial issues. Yes, I do agree.
So I think when you open the way for UMNO to come in, then you get all this. I hope my bosses. You get all this West Malaysian type politics coming into Sarawak. That's still something we're comfortable with.
Yes. So they rather to get.
But having said that, I would love to see more openness in Sarawak. To intellectual views, to suggestions from people like Jerald and his organization and NGOs. Maybe earlier on at the start we had some bad experiences with NGOs. Maybe that set the tone for it. With foreign NGOs, those who thought you Malaysians, what do you know? You're just a very backward country. We know better, things like that. But now we have groups in Malaysia who have the solutions, who have the ideas. So we'll have to see, maybe under the new administration, under Adnan, we will see the more
maybe.
openness.
But I have another question is that...
But before that question, this point by both of you about Sarawak don't get into racial politics, like the Semenanjung model. While it is not loud and apparent like Semenanjung, here every time we talk Malay, Chinese, Indian, Sarawak is equally ethnic centric like Semenanjung. And I'm going to give you an example. You can disagree with me. In the height of the Bakun Dam, when people were protesting, there was an election, national election, I think 99 election, I think. So that was the election just when Bakun was being starting, People were angry. So in Balaga, of course, I think it was a PBB candidate, I forget his name.
Balaga, I think it was PBDS, I think.
Who do you remember?
Billy Abid.
Billy Abid Joe. So he was the incumbent. So we thought, wow, we went to 15 kampong, everybody very angry, right? Normally when people are angry, they won't vote the person who brought in the dam. What happened? The politics of the state sort of introduced 7 candidates for Balaga election. All the 7 candidates represented different ethnic groups. Ukit, Kayan, Kenya. So you are telling me it's not race-based? It is ethnic-based. And then on election day, every kampong voted ethnic line. So Billy Abidjo won again. But if you put the total of what numbers he won and the other 6 ethnic candidates, they were bigger than his winning. So in my mind, ethnic centricism is there. Maybe it's not loud, but that's also used as a way to control. Because the discussion of Melanau, Dayak is now the discussion of James Masing and Adnan. Everybody's talking about it. It's not the Semenanjung Malay, Chinese, Indian, but it is just as dangerous in Sarawak that needs to be addressed because this divide politics is used. And Bakun for me was a classic. I was shocked. I said, all of you all opposed Bakun, but finally the same candidate won. And the strategy was simple. Just sponsor ethnic-based candidates. 7 candidates in one small constituency in Melaka in 1999. So
I think I have to agree with that. Because I grew up in Kuching, which is is a town, right, compared to those rural area. So in the town area, it comprises of Chinese, Malay, and Indian as well. So we don't have that kind of racial issues. But maybe what you say, Jerald said is now the ethnic. I think that's a problem. They use the similar ideas that in the rural area. I think that's the idea, but not in the town. I guess it's not in the town. That's why we don't feel much about that.
I think we understand that we are from different ethnic groups and things like that, and I won't deny that certain groups feel a bit more superior than others. But at the end of the day, we know where the line is drawn, and I think in West Malaysian politics, the line is very blurred. You can throw anything, sodomy, whatever you can think of, lah.
Yeah.
There's nothing sacred anymore. But in Sarawak, we know where the line is drawn. We are more careful, So introducing West Malaysian politics might just shake things up, lah.
Sorry, where the line is drawn?
That's exactly in Semenanjung.
In Sarawak, yeah.
In Sarawak, you don't. I don't think you can earn support by talking about per sex life, lah. Okay. And you have to respect each other's race. You don't use race in. Maybe when you vote according to your racial lines, but you don't
even religion. You won't get votes. You try to politicize Allah. You won't get votes.
You won't get votes. You won't get votes. You don't run down other people's race. Yeah. You don't run down other people's religion.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Respect each other.
So I think that's something Semenanjung needs to learn.
And for the benefit of our listeners who don't know the terms that we have been throwing around, Semenanjung refers to West Malaysia, whereas Borneo, or I should say Sabah Sarawak, refers to East Malaysia, and Taib is one of the
foremost
who is friendly to the current federal coalition in Malaysia.
And he has ruled for 33 years.
From PBB.
Even longer than Mahathir.
Yes, correct. Yes.
I think any leader of the world.
I think so. Probably only compared to Mugabe, probably.
Only Fidel Castro.
Fidel and maybe Mugabe now.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
But to Jerald, I have a question. Just now you mentioned about you being blacklisted. So because you are working closely with the NGO in Sarawak, right? What have those NGOs do with all those blacklisted people from Semenanjung? Did they fight for you guys or what?
Well, I mean, the Sarawak, the civil society space is very small. I think there's very few NGOs.
It's also pretty dangerous.
Dangerous, correct? Yes. I mean, some wrote letters, some went to inquire how to bring out, but even some joined in a petition. We sent a petition to Suhakam, I think 4 years ago. A list of us blacklisted to ask Suhakam to follow up. Even Suhakam followed up, no response from state government. The answer, what we found out Suhakam, is that they asked the immigration. Immigration said this is it's a direction from state chief minister's office. That's it. No explanation from chief minister. So the local have supported us in that signature campaign to open this up, but basically nothing else can be done. But I think the background to this is that at the ground level, it's easy to communicate. Like this, we can talk to people, we can work together because very common interest, fighting for rights. It's not about exporting a Semenanjung type model, because the Semenanjung NGOs will never be able to impose anything, because the Sarawakian NGOs are very strong, equally strong. They know what they want. But more dangerously, I think what you said just now, there's a very strong anti-Semenanjung sentiment. I think understandably because of the imbalance politics development since we became Malaysia. And people are angry, and I think rightfully so. You should be angry because you've not got as much as what you have given. But dangerously, politically, that has been used to keep the politics of status quo in place. And you said it rightfully. Just now you said it, right? Whether we should even bring in UMNO or choose type. My very good friend studied in university together, USM, she went back and she's working in Sarawak now. We all talk human rights in university. But when she went back there, the first few years so the last few years, 2 years ago, when I spoke to her critically about Chief Minister Taib, and this was exactly what she said. It's better to have a known enemy, one of our own people we are able to handle, than one of your people from Semenanjung. And I said, it's not about my people, it's about it doesn't matter the party, it can be PKR, PAS, whatever, but you choose your own Sarawakian leaders who are not corrupt. But we could not communicate because she says it's your people and my people. I said, hey, we never had this discussion before when we were talking, and I think, I don't know, Sarawak, maybe you all have a term for us, because this friend of mine used the word lipas, cockroach, cockroaches.
I never heard that.
So I don't know whether Indigenous has some term to refer to cockroaches coming into kacau, and I think it's very good political rhetoric to maintain status quo, and it's not probably shared by people on the ground, but maybe at the political elites,
I see.
If I may ask Raynore, let's delve a little into the environment issues there, and I'm curious. For example, I saw that the building of all the new dams would increase the energy consumption by 600%. Why do we need so much increase in energy? What industries are coming in? So, and is there certain parties that are benefiting from this?
I think a lot of the dams are being built. Recently, the Land Development Minister, James Masin, clarified that the dams will not all be built at once. Okay. But as demand goes along, a lot of the power will probably be going to the Sarawak corridor of renewable energy. It is a long-term plan up to the year 2030, I believe. And they are expecting investments up to 300 billion. It's a huge project, 300 billion. And the industries that are coming there are high-tech industries. Okay. Silicon, aluminium, things might not be so good to the environment.
Yeah, are you also importing pollution from China, who is now the largest renewable energy investor?
Yeah.
And we know that the environment track record has been pretty bad.
I think Sarawak needs these industries to push forward. Right now, we are very dependent on fuel, oil and gas. I think they contribute about 70% of the state's revenue.
But
it won't last forever.
A lot of this are lost in corruption rather than being translated into development of the state.
I wouldn't say corruption. I think Sarawak will be happy with a higher royalty. At the moment, we're only getting about. we might be making a lot of money. It looks like on paper you have 70% of your revenue comes from oil, but in actual fact you only get 5%. And one of the points that the opposition parties will be fighting for in Sarawak is to increase that royalty to, I think, 20%.
Yeah.
But if you look at the long run, you will need the industries to diversify in Sarawak. And palm oil is a bit shaky at the moment.
If I could ask, sorry, you said 17%, but in actual fact 5%, so 12% goes to?
The federal
government. Okay.
Yeah. You only get a royalty.
Okay.
Yeah, but this is to all state
states,
producers of oil, which is not fair.
Yes, it's not.
Because it should that money should go back for development and all that.
That's right. That's a part. I mean, like there's an organization fighting for that, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Royalty,
A lot of the opposition parties
also have put a amount. But this they did the same promise, at least because I was actively involved in Bakun. State government and federal government justified Bakun 2,400 megawatts of full capacity electricity would be utilized two ways. One was they're going to be undersea cable. That's been scrapped. So first justification to sell some of it to Semenanjung and Thailand didn't happen. Then they said no problem. We have enough investment. We're going to get aluminium smelting plant and heavy industries, because at the rate of usage of the common public in Sarawak is very slow, because population is only about 2.9 million, right, something like that. So it's not really huge, but they need investment. But even Bakun's investment I think they set up a Bintulu corridor or Bintulu investment. Even that did not really take off. The smelting plant came in and then pulled out.
No, I think 2 projects is taking shape there.
So I'm saying that this so-called promises of investment is a big promise, but and the lifespan of a dam, say, is 50 years.
That's why you need the PN government to stay in power to make sure they deliver.
Because what they deliver is they've delivered cutting out the forests and building dams and displacing people and putting oil palm. So they will deliver on that. But whether they will deliver on a sustainable development policy to answer the basic questions, why cut out, build up when the needs question is not answered. And they also use selling power to Indonesia, Kalimantan at that time. But Indonesia at the same period announced a 20,000 megawatt coal power plant in that site. So then we are saying, who is doing these studies to show the justification of this kind of investment? Then you realize that there must be something more that we are not seeing. Why push through? Murum Dam is, I think, started already. The dams are starting. They don't really care about the feedback and comment. Environment is one. They're cutting massive amounts of virgin forest, and I think the Sarawak forest is older than the Amazon forest.
One of the oldest.
One of the oldest one. Yes. I mean, we hardly have much left, But so, without justification, why you need so much? So I think that's a big question. The other question is, if you need development money, then it should come from a redistribution of the development funds, in the country, because Sarawak should benefit as one of the 3 that formed Malaysia. So it's not one of the 13. Sarawak and Sabah is not one of the 13. It's one of the 3. Sabah, Sarawak, and West Malaysia is one of the 3. Very important partners. So you rightfully should demand and get that development. But I don't think by pumping in this kind of, for me, not well thought out development plans. And James Massing only answered the questions when he was under attack. First it was 16, then it was 12, then now it is periodic. So it's not really well thought out. And I think any policy paper, development policy must be justified to its people, both in Semenanjung and Malaysia as a whole.
And I guess the reason why a lot of people are worried is that, would it just gone down the drain to corruption? Because we know that before this, Global Witness has exposed certain videos and whatnot. What do you think of those videos?
It's not under investigation, so we'll let the authorities handle it.
We need to wait for more videos to come out. Yeah, but I think the corruption one is not about Sarawak. It's endemic. The whole nation, all the political leaders have all kinds of stories and rumors, but we don't have anybody to investigate. No? So I don't think it's just on this.
Or I should say no one dares to, because some stories of private investigators that goes missing and whatnot,
But the internet is there.
To tell the story. But telling the story is different from bringing to book or people in power, because if they've abused, they should be answerable. If they've not, then they should be able to explain. I mean, people say that Rosma's son is so rich. Maybe he is rich, maybe we don't know. But explain. I think that disclosure should explain why, who is rich, what, the son of type. But the Chief Minister of Sarawak not only opened up development, but he also benefited personally, because a lot of the companies are in his or his family's name. So I think there's another element. The development is not only purely for the sake of Sarawakians, but also for his own enrichment. I mean, it's not only about Sarawak politician again. It's all politicians in Malaysia practice the same kind of politics.
Yeah, Raynore, let's hear more from you. What do you think of the things that we have discussed so far?
I think I agree with Jerald that it's something that affects all Malaysian politicians. And I think I'll leave it at that lah.
No comment.
All right. So let's move on to how do you think we could solve the problem so far? How can the ASEAN community help with this?
I think if you look at the ASEAN, I might not. Just from what I've read, I think a lot. In all the ASEAN countries, when it deals with indigenous people, the issues are basically the same. I think it's land mostly. I think there needs to be some kind of what's the organization you was talking about? Is that the human rights body?
Aisha.
I think Aisha needs to play a more bigger and effective role in this thing. I feel that from Sarawak's perspective, there has not been enough dialogue between the policymakers and the affected people, and also the planners. Maybe ASEAN as a whole the countries which can come together and maybe form a panel or forum advisory panel on issues like this. I read somewhere that I don't know, Jerald, maybe you can correct me, that indigenous people are not clearly defined in the ASEAN Charter. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're probably right. There's no mention of indigenous people as a norm, but this is also contested in the UN. So I think that's a good suggestion. We need to first give recognition that there are indigenous people in our region.
Right. And you will have to come back to each country to draw up the necessary policy framework, legal framework, and things like that. In Sarawak, for instance, land is a matter that has to be settled with the natives. It is very difficult to get land titles in Sarawak, and recently the government started a delineation exercise. I don't know how many titles have been given. I think we need to speak more. I think we need more active civil society to come out and talk about this, and I think there has to be more dialogue.
And the media has to play the role as well. To spread the news and speculate about what's happening and what they are facing.
I don't think speculation helps. Honestly, I think as much as possible, we should just tell the story as it is. Get to the people and tell the truth about the situation.
The Sarawak media is different from the West Malaysian media, right? You have what do you think? Because I know you have a set of different papers there.
I think I would say in the last maybe 10 years or so, the Sarawak papers have become more open. Last time you wouldn't get an opposition figure on the front page at all. Now you will see them on the front page.
The front page is also negative news.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to sort of get from you, since I haven't gone to Sarawak for a long time. But at least in Sabah also they have another set of papers. But in one sense, you're right. They are giving some space for opposition, which is still harder to find in Semenanjung, in West Malaysia than it is in. So maybe that's a hope. The media can play a role in highlighting
I think
this issue.
we're slowly evolving. They're slowly evolving. They're changing. They're realizing that you cannot shut out that section of audience. You know what I mean? Last time you cannot even get a page inside lead story, opposition story. Now you can get them on page 3.
So this, I think that's a brilliant proposal for the role of Aisha for indigenous people. Aisha, as we spoke this morning, it is one of its mandate is to do studies. Because that's the easier way. But its proposed study, its first study on business and human rights is not even published, not even out. This is after 5 years, but I would agree with him that maybe the next study should be on indigenous and lands. Because this affects all people, but many governments are uncomfortable. And I think you premised that very well by saying that, hey, recognize this people's land historically, and they need to be given recognition. And that way, it is not just Sarawak focus, it is all different states. Because even in Semenanjung, in West Malaysia, Orang Aslis are suffering a lot on this big land. Everybody is going in just saying this land, they sign a paper, and then the Orang Aslis run out and say, why are you in? So I think the similar story to the natives of Sarawak. So Aisha can play much more proactive role rather than waiting and keeping quiet. But not even sure whether Tan Sri Shafi has appraised or met the indigenous people suffering this and take this up to the Aisha level.
He's busy now.
Yes, it's that henceforth. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Jerald. Thank you, Raynore. And thank you, our fellow Williams. Thank you very much. And with that, we shall mark an end to our session today. We hope you enjoyed listening to Duran Ashan, and see you again next time.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.